Airports are stressful enough, but nothing sends your heart racing like watching a TSA officer pull your bag aside. Suddenly, every thought hits you at once. Did I pack my meds right? Are they about to toss out something I can't replace? And with new 2025 rules, one small mistake could turn your dream trip into a nightmare. But here's the truth. Traveling with medicine doesn't have to feel like a gamble. If you know the rules and the one mistake almost everyone makes, you can walk through security with total confidence, never worrying about losing what you need most. Today, I'm breaking down the secrets to flying with medication in 2025. From pills and liquids to international customs that catch travelers off guard, you'll know exactly how to protect your health and your trip. And trust me, the biggest mistake most travelers make is probably the one you've been guilty of too. Before we even get into bottles, liquids, or what the TSA cares about, there's one rule that rises above everything else. Think of it as the prime directive of traveling with medication. If you only remember one thing from this entire video, make it this. Never, under any circumstances, put your essential medication in a checked bag. That might sound obvious, but you'd be shocked at how many travelers break this rule without even realizing the risk. Maybe they're packing in a rush. Maybe they think they'll save space by tossing pill bottles into their rolling suitcase. Or maybe they assume that lost luggage is just one of those rare travel horror stories that only happens to other people. But the truth is, much harsher bags go missing every single day. And sometimes, they don't come back at all. Now imagine this scenario. You've landed after a long flight. You're tired, hungry, ready to head to your hotel. But as you're waiting at baggage claim, the carousel spins, the crowd clears, and your suitcase never shows up. Your airline promises to track it down and get it back to you within 24 to 72 hours. Sounds inconvenient, right? But here's the nightmare part. That bag has your heart medication, or your insulin, or your anti-seizure pills. Suddenly, it's not just about lost clothes. It's about your health, your safety, and maybe even your life. And here's the kicker. Even if your bag does eventually show up, airlines aren't responsible for the consequences of lost or delayed medication. That means, if you're in a foreign country scrambling to find a doctor who can write you an emergency prescription, the stress and the cost fall entirely on you. Good luck trying to get an American prescription filled in a country where the brand names are different, the rules are stricter, and the pharmacies don't carry what you're used to. In some places, it's next to impossible. And in others, even simple meds can require weeks of paperwork. So here's the solution. And it's so simple that it almost feels too easy. Your medications should always live in your personal item, not your checked suitcase, not even your rolling carry-on. Because here's another trap most travelers don't think about. When flights are full, airlines often force you to gate-check rolling bags. You get to the plane, the bins are stuffed, and suddenly your carry-on is being tagged and tossed under the plane. If your meds are in that bag, you've just broken the golden rule without meaning to. Your personal item, whether it's a backpack, purse, or small underseat bag, is the only place that gives you 100% control. That's the bag that never leaves your side. That's where your essential medication belongs, every single time you travel. Make it automatic. When you pack, the first thing that goes into your personal bag should be your meds. Build the habit so strongly that you'd never even think about putting them anywhere else. It doesn't matter if you're only flying for a weekend getaway or a month-long international trip. It doesn't matter if you've been lucky with luggage your whole life. The risk is too high, the consequences too serious, and the fix is too easy. Keep your medication on you, and you eliminate the single biggest source of travel disasters before they even start. And once that's locked in, you can finally focus on the next set of questions like, do you really need to carry all those bulky pharmacy bottles? Or can you just use your handy little pill organizer? This is where a lot of people get tripped up. And the answer depends entirely on where you're flying. Alright, so you've locked in the golden rule: your meds never leave your side. That's step 1. But now comes the part that confuses almost everyone. How do you actually pack them? Do you really need to carry a mountain of orange pharmacy bottles everywhere you go? Or can you just pour everything into one neat little weekly pill organizer and save yourself the hassle? Here's the deal. Inside the United States, the rules are surprisingly relaxed. The TSA isn't in the business of playing pharmacist. They're focused on security. That means if you're flying from, say, New York to Miami or Los Angeles to Chicago, you're generally allowed to use a pill organizer. You don't have to keep your medication in its original bottles. You could, in theory, walk through security with a little plastic case filled with mystery pills and still be within the rules. But here's the catch. Just because something is allowed doesn't mean it's smart. Imagine a TSA officer pulls your bag for a random check. They open it up and see an unlabeled container packed with random pills. Do they automatically know it's just your cholesterol medication and allergy tablets? No. To them, it looks like a bunch of unidentified drugs. 9 times out of 10, they'll wave you through. But every now and then, it can trigger extra questions, extra screening, and extra delays you really don't want to deal with. That's why, for domestic travel, the smarter play is to keep your pills in their original, labeled bottles whenever possible. Those bottles are like your proof of legitimacy. Your name, your doctor's name, and the prescription details are all right there on the label. TSA sees it, recognizes it instantly, and you're through in seconds. Organizers are convenient, sure, but they come with that tiny risk of extra hassle. And in the middle of a crowded airport security line, convenience isn't always worth the gamble. Now, let's shift gears. Because the moment you leave the US, the rules change completely. International travel is where pill organizers can go from slightly risky to major red flag. Customs officials in other countries don't know you. They don't know your doctor. All they see is a box of unlabeled pills that could be anything, and in some places, that can lead to very serious trouble. At best, they'll confiscate your medication. At worst, they might suspect you of smuggling and hold you up for questioning. Not exactly the way you want to start your vacation. That's why when you're flying internationally, there's no debate. Your medication must be in its original pharmacy bottles with the label intact. This is your proof. It shows what the medication is, who prescribed it, and that it's legally yours to carry. And here's one pro tip most people don't think about. Make sure the name on the bottle matches the name on your passport. If you're traveling under your married name but your prescription was written under your maiden name, that mismatch can raise eyebrows. Fix it before you fly. So, to sum this up, inside the US, pill organizers are technically fine, but bottles are better. Outside the US, pill organizers are a terrible idea, and bottles are the only safe option. It's the difference between a smooth entry and a nightmare at customs. And once you've got your pills squared away, there's another rule travelers constantly worry about, and it's probably the one that's been drilled into your head every time you've flown. The infamous TSA liquids rule. But here's where the story takes a surprising twist. Especially for 2025. You've heard it 1,000 times. All liquids must be in 3.4-ounce bottles. Everything has to fit in a quart-sized bag. And if it doesn't, say goodbye at the security checkpoint. This rule has been the bane of travelers for years. It's the reason expensive creams, cough syrups, and prescription ointments get tossed in the trash by the handful every single day. People panic, assume the rule applies across the board, and end up losing medications they desperately need. But here's the big secret for 2025 that most travelers don't realize. The 3.4-ounce rule doesn't apply to medically necessary liquids, gels, or aerosols. That's right. You are allowed to bring them in the quantities you reasonably need for your trip. No tiny bottles, no sneaky hacks, no risk of losing your meds at the checkpoint. This exemption covers far more than most people realize. Prescription cough syrups? Allowed. Prescription creams or ointments? Allowed. Inhaler solutions, injectable medications, or even pre-filled pens like EpiPens or insulin? All allowed. Even the gel packs or ice packs you need to keep your medication cool are covered. The TSA recognizes that these items are essential, and they make exceptions for them. The problem is that most travelers don't know how to use this exemption correctly. They either try to sneak liquids through, which gets them flagged, or they toss them out because they assume they won't be allowed. Both are unnecessary mistakes. The key is simple: separate and declare. Here's how it works. As you get to the security checkpoint, take your medical liquids out of your bag and put them in their own clear bag, separate from your regular toiletries. When you hand your bag over, just give the TSA officer a quick, polite heads up. "Hi, I have some liquid medications I need to declare." That's it. They'll usually screen them separately. And in most cases, you'll be cleared in seconds. And here's something even more important. If you're not comfortable with your medication going through the X-ray scanner, you have the right to request a visual inspection instead. Not many people know this, but it's written right into TSA policy. You simply ask, they'll check it visually, and you're good to go. The mistake travelers make is trying to hide their medical liquids in their bag like they're smuggling something. That just guarantees the scanner flags your bag. TSA pulls it aside, and now you're in for a stressful inspection. Being up front is always faster, smoother, and less stressful. So remember this: the liquids rule is strict for shampoos, lotions, and sodas. But when it comes to medication, the rule bends in your favor. You just have to know how to work with it. And if you think that's a relief, wait until you hear about what happens when you're carrying needles, syringes, or medical devices. That's where most people really start to panic. But the truth might surprise you. For most travelers, the thought of carrying sharp objects or medical devices onto a plane sounds like an instant red flag. You imagine TSA agents gasping the moment they see a syringe or pulling you aside for a full interrogation. And honestly, the anxiety makes sense. Needles and medical gear look intimidating. But here's the truth. The TSA allows these items as long as you follow one simple rule. That rule is this: if you bring syringes or needles, they must be paired with the medication they're intended for. In other words, a syringe by itself might raise suspicion. A syringe packed together with a clearly labeled vial of insulin or another prescription drug? Completely fine. The label proves what the syringe is for, and the officer can immediately see there's a medical purpose. And here's another pro tip most travelers don't think about. Don't just throw syringes loose in your bag. Keep them in a hard, protective case. Ideally a small travel-sized sharps container. This keeps them safe, prevents accidents, and shows you're handling them responsibly. TSA officers notice these details, and it often makes your screening go faster. Now, what about other medical devices? Things like insulin pumps, continuous glucose monitors, CGMs, EpiPens, or inhalers. These are all absolutely allowed on planes. In fact, TSA has clear procedures in place to help travelers with these devices get through security smoothly. If you're wearing a device, like an insulin pump or CGM, you don't have to remove it. You can simply let the officer know before you go through the scanner. If you're worried about interference from the scanner, you can request a manual pat-down instead. That option is always available to you, no questions asked. And then there's a hidden gem of a program that almost no one knows about: TSA Cares. This is a free helpline you can call at least 2 hours before your flight. It's designed specifically for travelers with medical conditions, disabilities, or devices. Call them, explain your situation, and they'll answer your questions directly. In some cases, they'll even arrange for a passenger support specialist to meet you at the airport and guide you through the screening process. Imagine having someone on your side, making sure everything goes smoothly. That's exactly what TSA Cares can do. The key theme here is communication. Most travelers get into trouble when they try to hide or downplay their medical gear. But if you're open, upfront, and prepared, the TSA process is straightforward. You have the right to carry these items, and officers are trained to handle them. All you need to do is speak up, stay calm, and remember, your health always comes first. And while syringes and devices can feel stressful, the real blind spot for most travelers isn't prescription medication at all, it's the over-the-counter stuff. The pills you grab at the drugstore without a second thought can actually land you in major trouble once you leave the U.S. Here's where most people let their guard down. Prescription medications get all the attention, but over-the-counter drugs, those everyday items you toss into your carry-on without thinking, can be just as risky, especially when you're traveling internationally. Let's start with domestic travel, because that part is easy. Inside the United States, the TSA doesn't care about your Advil, Tylenol, allergy tablets, or stomach relief pills. You can bring as many over-the-counter medications as you want, in pill form, with no limits. They don't need to be in original bottles. You can use an organizer, a plastic baggie, whatever works for you. For liquid OTC meds, the same medical exemption applies. Larger bottles of contact solution, cough syrup, or saline solution are all allowed if you declare them. Domestically, it's simple, stress-free, and incredibly flexible. But the moment you cross into another country, that same relaxed mindset can backfire. Why? Because the US isn't the world. Other countries have different rules. And sometimes drugs we think of as totally harmless are actually banned, restricted, or considered controlled substances overseas. And the scary part is, I didn't know, doesn't get you off the hook. Here are just a few real-world examples that have caught travelers off guard. Pseudoephedrine, the main ingredient in Sudafed, perfectly normal in the US, but banned in countries like Japan because it can be used to produce methamphetamine. Travelers have had it confiscated at customs, and in some cases, faced penalties for bringing it in. Codeine, commonly found in painkillers and cough syrups in the US, but treated like a dangerous narcotic in places like Greece and the UAE. Bringing it in without permission can land you in serious legal trouble. Diphenhydramine, the active ingredient in Benadryl. You can buy it anywhere in the US, but it's restricted in countries like Zambia and even treated as a controlled substance in some places. Now imagine you're just trying to be responsible by bringing your allergy medicine or cough syrup, and suddenly you're pulled into a customs office and asked to explain why you're carrying something that's illegal there. It's stressful, embarrassing, and in some countries could even escalate to fines or worse. That's why the golden rule for international travel isn't just pack your meds. It's research every single drug you plan to bring. Even the ones that seem basic. Even the ones you assume are harmless. Before you fly, check your destination country's embassy website for a list of restricted medications. It's not optional, it's essential. And here's the kicker. It's not just about your final destination. If you have a layover in another country, their rules apply too. That means the medicine that's fine in London could be a problem if your layover is in Dubai. So, while TSA rules cover you in the U.S., once you land abroad, you're on someone else's turf. And the penalties for being unprepared can be brutal. That's why in the next section, we're going to talk about how to build your ultimate international customs survival kit. The one thing that separates smooth travelers from the ones who end up in a nightmare scenario. Getting through TSA in the US is only half the battle. The real challenge begins when you land in another country. Because here's the hard truth. Every nation has its own laws about medications, and customs officers don't care what's allowed back home. Once you step off that plane, you're playing by their rules, and saying, "I didn't know," won't get you out of trouble. So how do you protect yourself? The answer is something I call the documentation trinity. 3 layers of proof that can make or break your experience at international customs. Without them, you're rolling the dice. With them, you're prepared for almost anything. Layer 1. Original labeled containers. We've already touched on this, but it's worth repeating because it's the foundation. Your medication must stay in the original pharmacy bottles, with the prescription label intact. That label is your golden ticket. It proves what the drug is, who it was prescribed to, and that it's legitimate. Pill organizers may be convenient, but internationally, they scream suspicious, and if the name on the bottle doesn't match the name on your passport, fix it before you travel. Even small inconsistencies can trigger questions. Layer 2. Copies of your prescriptions. This is your backup. Ask your doctor or pharmacist for a printed copy of each prescription you're carrying. It doesn't have to be fancy, just the basic details of the drug, dosage, and your name. If customs officers ever doubt what's in your bottle, handing them a prescription slip can clear things up instantly. It's also a lifesaver if your meds are lost and you need an emergency refill abroad. Layer 3. A signed doctor's letter. This is the ace card most travelers don't even think to bring. A formal letter from your doctor, printed on official letterhead, signed and dated, explaining exactly what medications you're taking, why you need them, and in what quantity. It should list both the brand and generic names, the dosage, your condition, and your doctor's contact information. This is especially critical if you're traveling with a controlled substance. ADHD medications like Adderall or Ritalin, anti-anxiety drugs like Xanax or Valium, strong painkillers, or sleep aids. Why is this letter so powerful? Because it turns a stressful interrogation into a quick explanation. Instead of arguing or scrambling, you can simply hand over the document. It shows you've done your homework, you're following the rules, and you have medical proof for everything you're carrying. Bonus points. If you get it translated into the language of your destination country, it removes another layer of confusion. And here's something most people don't realize. Some countries require special permits for certain medications, even if they're perfectly normal back home. Others only allow a 30-day supply. A few even ban specific prescriptions outright. This is where a little pre-trip research pays off. Contact the embassy or consulate of the country you're visiting, or even the countries you'll transit through on layovers, and confirm the rules directly. Don't just rely on travel forums or secondhand stories. Regulations can change, and what was fine last year might not be fine this year. The documentation trinity is your shield against all of this. It doesn't just make customs smoother, it protects you from fines, confiscations, or even being detained over something you thought was harmless. It's the difference between walking confidently through the airport and spending hours in a back office explaining why you're carrying suspicious pills. But documents alone aren't enough. Once you've got the paperwork covered, the next step is learning how to actually pack your meds so security and customs become effortless. That's where the pros separate themselves from the rookies. Let's be honest, most travelers throw their meds into a side pocket and call it a day. But if you want a stress-free experience, especially in 2025, when rules are tighter and security is sharper, you need a better system. That's where a dedicated medical kit comes in. Here's how to build one. 1. Choose a clear, resealable bag. Think of it like your TSA liquids bag, but specifically for medication. Using a clear pouch makes everything visible at a glance, which not only speeds up screening, but also shows officers you're organized and responsible. 2. Group everything together. Put your prescription bottles, liquid meds, copies of prescriptions, and doctor's letter all in that one kit. When you hit security, you can pull out a single bag and place it in the bin. No rummaging. No delays. Officers love it when travelers are this prepared. It makes their job easier and your trip smoother. 3. Add your tools. If you need syringes, inhalers, gel packs, or devices, include them too. Keep them paired with the medication they're meant for. Everything in one place means nothing gets questioned out of context. 4. Pack a buffer supply. Always bring at least 1 extra week's worth of medication beyond what you need. Flights get cancelled, bags get lost, trips get extended. Having that buffer is the difference between calm and chaos. Remember, getting an American prescription filled overseas can be nearly impossible, especially for controlled substances. 5. Back up your documents digitally. Snap photos of all your prescriptions, doctor's letters, and labels. Upload them to a secure cloud service like Google Drive or iCloud, but also save them directly on your phone in case you're offline. If your physical documents get lost or damaged, your digital copies become a lifeline. This isn't just about convenience, it's about control. Imagine walking up to security, pulling out your neatly packed medical kit, and breezing through while everyone else is fumbling with toiletries and tangled wires. Imagine landing in another country and knowing you have every piece of proof you need at your fingertips. That kind of preparation kills the stress before it even starts. And there's one more benefit nobody talks about. A dedicated kit also makes your life easier once you're at your destination. No digging through your luggage every morning. No forgetting doses because your pills are buried in your bag. Your kit is organized, visible, and ready whenever you need it. So while other travelers are sweating through security, panicking over lost bags, or begging a foreign pharmacist for help, you'll already be 3 steps ahead. Because once you master the packing system, you're not just traveling, you're traveling like a pro. And that brings us to the big picture. You've got the golden rule. You've learned how to handle pills, liquids, devices, and even OTC blind spots. You've built your survival kit and mastered the art of packing. But what does it all really mean for your trip? That's where the conclusion ties everything together, and trust me, the payoff is worth it. So let's step back for a moment. Think about that nervous feeling you get, standing in the security line, watching TSA pull someone's bag, and wondering if you're next. That feeling comes from one thing: uncertainty. Not knowing if you packed the right way. Not knowing if your meds are safe. Not knowing if some hidden rule is about to ruin your trip. But now, that uncertainty is gone. You know the golden rule: never pack vital meds in a checked bag. You know how to handle pills at home and abroad. When to use bottles versus organizers. You know that the liquids rule doesn't apply the way most people think, and how declaring your medical liquids actually makes life easier, not harder. You know needles, syringes, pumps, and inhalers aren't obstacles, but items TSA has clear procedures for. You've seen how over-the-counter meds, the ones people overlook, can actually be the biggest international trap. And you've built your survival kit with documents, letters, and backups, so that wherever you land, you're ready. This isn't just about passing through security. It's about taking control of your trip from the very start. Because when you're prepared, you're not at the mercy of airport chaos, airline mistakes, or confusing foreign laws. You're in control of your health, your time, and your peace of mind. And that's the real point here. Travel isn't supposed to be about worrying whether your medication will get tossed in the trash or confiscated at customs. It's supposed to be about the adventure waiting on the other side of that flight. The sights, the food, the people, the memories. All of that becomes possible when you're not carrying anxiety in your back pocket. So here's the challenge for you. The next time you pack for a trip, start with your medications first. Build your kit. Gather your documents. take those extra 5 minutes to prepare the right way. Because the difference between a stressful trip and a smooth one often comes down to those small choices made before you even leave home. And if this guide gave you clarity, if it replaced that knot in your stomach with confidence, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe for more travel guides just like this, and share this with a friend who's always stressing about airport security. Because the truth is, most people don't know these rules. And sharing them could save someone you care about from a vacation-ruining mistake. The rules for 2025 aren't here to trip you up, they're here to keep you safe. And now that you know them, you can finally walk into that airport with confidence, knowing you've mastered one of the biggest stress points in travel. So pack smart, travel safe, and I'll see you in the next guide where we tackle even more secrets that airlines and airports don't want you to know.